Welcome inside Studio B on this rainy Wednesday in the nation's capital. We've got a great show lined up for you today. As always, it is nice to have you here. Members of Congress spent this day questioning top administration officials about President Barack Obama's troop surge plans for Afghanistan. And many lawmakers are already expressing misgivings about it. At a Senate Armed Services Committee hearing, Democrats questioned the wisdom of escalating the 8-year-old war, while Republicans expressed concern about Mr. Obama's plan to start withdrawing troops in 18 months. We'll get in-depth reaction and analysis from two men who know the region. But first, the latest from CNN's Sandra Endo.
The president's new strategy in Afghanistan: the faster more U.S. troops get in, the sooner America can get out of the war.
The status quo is not sustainable. As Commander-in-Chief, I have determined that it is in our vital national interest to send an additional 30,000 U.S. troops to Afghanistan. After 18 months, our troops will begin to come home.
Last night, President Obama laid out his new plan to hold off Taliban insurgents and stabilize Afghanistan in a primetime speech at West Point. The reaction to the president's strategy is mixed. During a hearing before the Senate Armed Services Committee, some lawmakers and top administration officials exchanged differing views on the president's mission.
A date for withdrawal sends exactly the wrong message to both our friends and our enemies.
The current shortfall in terms of partnering is not a shortage of American combat troops. It's a shortage of Afghan troops.
Many U.S. allies back the new approach, and members of NATO are committing at least 5,000 more troops to the effort. Defense Secretary Robert Gates says more troops on the ground are needed to counter insurgents.
The current status quo in Afghanistan, the slow but steady deterioration of the security situation and growing influence of the Taliban is unacceptable.
And the price tag for the new war effort is roughly $30 billion for this year alone. But the president says he'll work with Congress to try to lower those costs. In Washington, I'm Sandra Endo.
Joining us now here on News Talk, Politico senior editor John Ward Anderson. He has reported extensively from Afghanistan. Welcome back. It's great to see you. Also with us is retired Army Colonel Douglas Macgregor. He was a combat commander in the first Gulf War. He is also the author of Warrior's Rage. Thanks for your time today. It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Has President Obama, after a fairly lengthy period of deliberation and discussion and contemplation about this, has he chosen a wise strategy for the U.S. in Afghanistan? John?
Well, I'm not going to judge whether or not the president has done something wise. I will say this. I question whether or not 30,000 troops is enough to make a significant difference in Afghanistan. You can lose 30,000 soldiers in a deep valley in the Hindu Kush in Afghanistan. I'm not sure that it will have enough of an impact. Furthermore, that he'll be able to begin a significant drawdown by July of 2011.
So it might sound to folks outside the military like a huge commitment, like a lot of bodies.
Yes.
But you're suggesting that given the challenges in this part of the world, it might not be so.
It's, you know, the problems in Afghanistan are long-standing. Everybody knows them, and they're really complex and they're really severe. You've got to combat the drug trade. You've got to stop corruption. You've got to find al-Qaeda, and you've got, most importantly, you've got to bring security to the Afghan people. And I just don't know that an additional 30,000 U.S. troops is going to be able to achieve that.
Colonel Macgregor.
Well, listen, John makes a good point. The Russians calculated that you needed about 600,000 troops just to control the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So if that's any indication at all, the notion that 34,000 will make any real difference is ludicrous. It's a gesture. That's all it is. And it's unfortunate because what he really should have said to the American people, in my judgment, is, listen, conditions in Afghanistan have changed. The conditions that brought us to this region in 2001 don't exist right now. We are not combating al-Qaeda. General Jones, the National Security Council staff member, said that we had perhaps 100 true al-Qaeda operatives in the border region between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Well, if that's true, given what we plan to spend, we're spending about $300 million per al-Qaeda fighter right now to deal with that. That seems a little silly. What's happened in the interim, we talk about the Taliban. The Taliban is the clerical leadership of the Pashtun. The Pashtun represent 45 million, somewhere between 11 and 12 million or even more in Afghanistan, and the rest in Pakistan. The border's meaningless. They're one people. They are right now in a conflict with both Kabul and Islamabad. They see these governments as corrupt. They are fighting them. Unfortunately, we're there. and we're foreigners, and we're unwanted, and so they're fighting us. Beyond these people, you have other groups, the Uzbeks, the Tajiks up in the north that worked with us in 2001. They constitute most of the troops that are in the police and the military, and they're not wanted, obviously, in the Pashtun areas. And then you have the Hazara, who are down in the western corner, and they're really Persians, and they're connected to Iran. They're not part of this per se. Some are, but very few. This is really a Pashtun issue. So we're fighting what is increasingly looking like a national liberation movement, which is not a smart thing.
So it makes me wonder if what the Colonel says is correct. What will American troops be doing over there once they arrive? From what the President said last night and from other reporting that you and Politico have done, what's your sense of what the mission will be?
Well, he didn't lay out the mission all that concretely last night, but I think one of the key things that he's hoping that the U.S. troops are going to do is build up the Afghan army and the Afghan police force. There's only about 180,000 of them right now. That is woefully inadequate to take over when the U.S. troops prepare to leave. So, you know, one of the key things they're going to be doing, I think, is beefing up the Afghan security forces, and then they're going to be patrolling in the south and the east of Afghanistan along the border area with Pakistan, which is where Al-Qaeda and most of the Taliban are located.